What is going on, everybody? I have here with me today a friend and a mentor of mine named Blake Turner. He's a phenomenal person, a great human being, and he was listening to some of the podcasts just last week, and he actually had some interesting points and thoughts about some concepts that we were talking about, and I really wanted to bring him on board. And before we jump into any of that, I just want to have you, if you don't mind, Blake, just kind of tell us a little bit about yourself. Where are you from? What should everybody know?
Yeah, cool. First off, thank you. Thank you for allowing me to be on here. I'm not a veteran. Want to make sure everybody knows that. Not a veteran, but I have fought some battles, and that's what we're here to talk about, right? We're gonna look at the similarities, not the differences, and it's just an honor to get on here and serve you, right? Serve the people that went out there and did what you did. So thank you for that. My name's Blake. God, you know, that question, who am I? That's a big one. You know, I would say,
We can drop it down.
yeah, no,
No, yeah, no, go for it, man. I interrupted you. Go
you're
for
good.
it.
I would say at my core, I'm a man of the woods. I love to be in the woods. Like I grew up outside. I grew up in the country. Um, I've most of my life I've worked with my hands. So I've been in construction jobs. I'm an electrician by trade, but truly, the people that truly know me, they know me as I'm a person that spends a lot of time in the woods, and that's what I like to do, and so that's who I am, Thad.
So good, and that makes just sums up perfectly the first time I went out to your house. I guess the only time
Uh,
lives on the mountaintop in South Carolina, and we sat there shooting a shotgun out right outside of your front porch, just surrounded by the woods, lives in the woods. Just a perfect thing. And well, grew up. You were born and raised in South Carolina.
yep, yeah, born and raised in the northwest corner of South Carolina. I moved about 4 miles from the house I grew up in, so I haven't really. I've traveled a lot in my life now, but I haven't moved that far. My home base has been pretty tight, and it'll probably stay here. I love this place, so but yeah, that's
Well, I can.
go ahead.
It's an easy. No, I was gonna say an easy place to love. I was fascinated just getting out there, just how quickly you could go. Uh, Literally get into the woods. You can go shooting. Something I love to do. Sit out in your just out your front porch. Go shooting, and then you can jump out and just drive around your property, and it's just awesome. It's a great spot. It's easy to see why you wouldn't move too far from there. So, what was it like growing up in South Carolina for you, Blake?
Yeah, so growing up out here, there's you entertain yourself, right? And so that's the number one thing to know is that like Mother Nature's around you. You go and you entertain yourself, and the people I hung out with most of the time, we surround ourselves with people that are similar to us. They did the same thing, right? So my buddies and me, we were always out in the woods, always in the woods, always going fishing, always doing something of that nature, and a really close knit community here where I grew up at. And there's all walks of life, right? There's, back behind me over here, there's a mountain that has multi-million dollar homes on it. I think Michael Jordan maybe has a house up there or used to, and it's like big houses and all the way down to the trailer parks, right? Like that's where we're at, and it's just every walk of life. But it's yeah, it was a good place to grow up. We grew up in church, like the typical Southern Baptist. You know, every Sunday, here we are. It doesn't matter what you did Saturday night. Like this is where we come in the morning, and that's really how I grew up. It's just a really close knit group of people, right?
Hmm. All right, man, that sounds amazing. And I know you've got two kids. I could see where wanting your kids to have that experience as well would be that's a motivating factor. I love it. And we talked about it last week. One of the big reasons that sparked this conversation was just talking about just drinking and alcohol. And I know a lot of veterans talk about it, which, by the way, I love how you circled up earlier. I got to point it out. I love how you framed up that not about veteran, but that you fought some battles, and I thought that was just perfectly teed up a lot of what we're going to talk about because it's so true, and the similarities that bring us together. And that's a big piece of stuff that I love to talk about is just how close, how similar we are, not how different we are, which is what you said very, very nicely. One of the things we talked about though was just alcohol, and I know that a lot of veterans tend to drink pretty heavily, drink a lot, and it was a conversation that we just talked about, just the relationship with alcohol and where that stems from. And just before we start to unpack that, do you mind sharing a little bit about your relationship with alcohol and what that is?
Yeah. Wow. So, my relationship with alcohol took a lot of different stages. When I was younger, when I was a teenager, it was something, we did. And is really, again, we hung out together. We were a close knit group of friends, right? A bunch of country boys out in the field. That's what we did. Hey, we're going fishing. Okay, who's going to get the beer? Like it wasn't like, it wasn't even a question. This is, this is
Yeah.
what we did. And it felt harmless, right? It felt harmless, but I think, um, you know, as my life went on, my relationship with the things that I love to do stayed tied to my relationship with alcohol. And so, going out to the lake, or
Mhm.
maybe going to a like a college football game, or really just anything where you could drink, for me it became where you should drink, not just because you can, but you almost should, right? And I guess as my relationship with alcohol progressed, I started to look at other people that would not drink when they would go to a college football game. They would not drink when they were out, at the lake for a day. And I just started to see those people as weird, like how that this doesn't make sense. And I think that that's about the time where I started to notice that my relationship with alcohol had changed. I had started making decisions based on alcohol. Like, am I going to go here? Can you drink? Uh, you know, am I going to go here? How am I going to get booze in there? Right. And what time should I get there? Because I don't want to start drinking too early. Like, it's just, and I just started to ask myself a lot of these questions. And that was really the red flag for me that, wow, like this chemical is really, it's making a lot of decisions for you, you know?
Got it. And I think you said it. I want to make sure everybody caught it earlier because you said when you introduced it, let's go fishing. Who's going to get the booze? Not who's going to get the tackle, not who's going to get, like, where are we going? It's who's going to get the booze. Because if we're going to be fishing, we're going to have something to drink. And what would you say as we dive into this? I know we transitioned from who you are and right into alcohol, and I'd love to just touch on because the reason that we started talking about it was you had listened to that episode about oxytocin and just kind of high level. What does alcohol do and your knowledge level and your opinion to oxytocin?
Yeah. So alcohol is a tricky substance, right? We originally we associate alcohol with being around friends and like drinking socially. And alcohol, what it does, especially with repeated use, it will start to block your ability to produce oxytocin, which is that chemical, like you had mentioned, that you get when you connect with other people. And we start to kind of replace that feeling with the feeling of alcohol. Now, because it blocks our ability to produce oxytocin, our body starts to almost not even seek it anymore. Like it almost gives up and says, "Hey, look, we don't even know what that feels like," right? And from there, it becomes almost a self fulfilling prophecy because we drink because a lot of times we're not connected to people, or we believe that people would never understand us even if we tried to tell them. And then, of course, we don't connect because we're doing that to our body. And we do it to our body because we haven't connected. And it just creates this self fulfilling prophecy that's super easy to fall into. And it happens really slowly. Like it's masked. You don't feel it. You don't see it. It's really easy to look back and see it. But when you're in it, it's hard to see it.
And you said it happens really, really slowly over some time, and so much to unpack inside of that. There's just we were talking about how much content, how much there is to talk about this, and What was that like for you as it moved slowly? If you don't mind sharing.
Yeah, it really just came back to the questions that I was asking myself. That was the progression. You know, it wasn't, hey, who's going to be there? Where are we going? It started to be, how am I going to make sure I've got enough ice that's going to last that long in the South Carolina heat, right? like I start like
Mhm.
that was the main thing. I started asking myself these questions, and I started making that the priority. On my priority list, it started jumping up to the top. Where that was the main thing is, and it I couldn't see it because for me, it I felt like everybody thought that way, right?
Mhm.
It's kind of like the song, and completely stole this from someone else. Paul Churchill does a recovery podcast called Recovery Elevator, and um, he uh, he had mentioned the song "Everybody Was Kung Fu Fighting," and that's what it feels like. It feels like everybody is kung fu fighting, right? Like everybody's doing this, and until I kind of removed myself from it, I looked back and I was like, wait, no, just the people I was around were kung fu fighting, right? Like the people I were around were hanging out at the bar until, whenever. Like that's a lot of other people just went to
Mhm.
sleep at normal time, and but it for me it was really hard to see because I'd surrounded myself. We have that um, as it the reticular activating system, right, in your brain where you start to
Yep.
you start to surround yourself with things that are making sense to you, and it just keeps going, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you find more of those things that you're seeking to find.
Yeah.
The man, and I also want to point out too, and I think we could spend a ton of time um, on a whole nother conversation about how you mentioned how you kind of push other people away as a result of it. Anybody that's not like you, anybody that's not like that, what happens there? Why do you think that it drives people away, and what experience do you have with that?
Well, I think one of the things that you just mentioned, it's it's easy to feel like nobody would get you, right? Like that's the main thing, and it feels like it's almost a waste of time to explain it if if they don't feel it. And what I found is I just surrounded myself with people that had the same relationship with alcohol as me too, and and that made it easier, right? Because it was just easier. Um, you surround
Yeah.
yourself with people that are like you at the current time. But yeah, that was the main thing.
And what would you say? Because I love that we're unpacking this and just talking about what would you say the biggest thing to do is if you find yourself isolating, because that was a talking point and one of the just a couple of weeks ago where we talked about just how we isolate from others, we isolate from people that we don't feel similar to, and I love how much this connects to when you said I'm not a veteran. Well, look at how similar we all are, because I know every single person listening right now can relate to that I feel different, so I can't relate. And that causes us to not connect, to not talk, to not have a conversation with people that are different, with people that might be on a different perspective. So, what thoughts do you have about that? And maybe what advice would you give to anybody feeling that way?
Oh wow, yeah. What helped me? I'm a very competitive person, right? And for me, it was this. I hope this comes out the right way, but when I found other people that were struggling with the same thing I was, and they had overcame it, I looked at that and I was like, all right, yep, got it.
Hmm.
I can do that, right? I can do that. And so just putting myself in those rooms, whether it be, an recovery meeting or some type of meeting where other people are willing to step out and talk about what they're going through, just seeing that and seeing how it affected me, and then I had this urge to want to do it for others, right? Like I wanted other people to hear, the person that
Right.
was one day in of saying, "Hey, look, I'm going to ditch the booze." If they were one day in, and maybe I was only 30 days in, and say, "Hey, look, this is what day 30 looks like," So that was for me. That's what helped. Is just surrounding myself with people because there's other people like you out there, regardless of what you're going through, and they've already created a group for you to talk about it, right? And once you get it out, it's not that scary anymore,
Yeah.
right? Once you talk about it, it loses its power.
I love that you mentioned it loses its power. And, big picture, I think that I just want to point out too, because in no way are we saying that anybody does have any problems with alcohol. This is just describing, and we wanted to talk about just in general, what is your relationship? Just encourage you to consider what is your current relationship with alcohol? Is it something that you're planning your life around? Is it something that's driving you to do different things each day? Because if it is, that might be something to reflect on. And so that was a big part of this conversation right now that me and Blake just wanted to introduce and have is just to start to challenge you to consider what is your current relationship with alcohol? Is it something that you're planning everything around, or is it something that just kind of happens when it happens, that but you're not planning your life around it? And so that's a big part of the message today, is just consider what that is, and what is your relationship with alcohol, um, good, bad, and different. What is your current relationship with it? And Blake, as we start to wrap this up, is there anything else you want to leave everybody with?
Yeah, no, it's just a piggyback off of what you said. I don't believe anyone can tell somebody
Okay.
else that they have an issue, right? Don't believe that at all. That's something that we all have to uncover. And
Yeah.
alcohol is not bad, right? Like that's the main thing. Like if I would leave everybody on, alcohol is not bad, right? It's the way we treat it. It's our relationship with it, and you could insert anything here, right? Whether it be alcohol, whether it be, um, pride, whatever it is, it's the way we treat it. And that's what we're here to talk about. And man, I just want to say another
Yeah.
time, another opportunity to say thank you for allowing me to be on here.